Okay then, so EQing on the R24. In the same menu as the pan control, it's pan/EQ. The only difference is on the EQ controls you've got a few more settings to play with. So let's select the first bank of 6 tracks. It's set up the same as before. Overhead, bass, paired stereo guitar, overhead, kick drum, and then on track number 10 the lead vocal. Okay. So we now want to EQ. Let's have a look. We want to EQ that lead vocal. Okay. So if we select the bank of the second bank of tracks and select track 10, we can go into the pan EQ. Track 11 is selected at the moment, so we'll just correct that with track 10, and we can go down. You can see we've got three EQ controls, 3 bands that I spoke about earlier. So we've got EQ high, EQ mid, and EQ low. The high frequencies, the mid frequencies, and the low frequencies. Here's something I use quite a lot when I'm EQing, when I'm messing about with EQ settings, particularly on vocal tracks, is I will go into the EQ low, so I'll go down the menu until EQ low is selected and press enter. And I then change the type at the top by selecting enter again when type is selected. No I don't. I move the jog wheel, sorry, it's been a while since I did this. I move the jog wheel to set what kind of EQ effect I want on the low end. So I'm going to move that up to, you've got two choices on the low. You've got EQ low, which just EQs the low end by the amount of gain you specify here. It's currently set at 0 dB, so that's flat, no boost, no cut. I can move that down to, what will it go down to? -12 dB cut. I think it's +12, yeah, +12 dB boost. And at the minute the frequency selected is at 125 Hertz. So that's the frequency that I'm targeting in that low band. You can change that again, look, you can go all the way up to 1.6 kilohertz, which I would argue isn't, it's more mids anyway, but there's obviously a degree of overlap there. And then it goes all the way down to 40 Hertz. So it was by default set at 125 Hertz. It goes up in increments. And the gain is plus or 12 dB at any of those frequencies you want to select. So that's how you change the low frequency. But what I normally do, particularly on vocal tracks, is I would go into the type and I would select the second type, which is low cut, and it says at the top now low cut filter. And then I would come down here to around 100 Hertz, sometimes 80, but normally about 100 Hertz. And I would leave it set low cut filter at 100 Hertz on the vocal, and that means anything coming in on the vocal below 100 Hertz is cut entirely out of the sound, which means my low frequency rumbles, I'm not singing anywhere near below 100 Hertz. So all my low frequency rumbles and rough handling noise from microphones and microphone stands and all that is any bleed from the kick drum, from the bass guitar, anything like that it's picking up. So if we carry on looking at the EQ function following that battery fail on my camcorder a few moments ago, we've looked at using a low cut filter on vocals, and I've got this set for 100 Hertz. And then you have EQ controls for the mid-range. Again, you can adjust the gain, how much you are cutting or boosting, and on the mid-range, again it's -12 to +12 dB at various frequencies, which you can adjust by here, from 40 Hertz, which is really well into the bottom end, all the way up to 18 kilohertz, which is almost almost at the very top limit of human hearing. And then you have a Q value down here. Now it's been a while since I looked at this, so you're gonna have to look it up essentially. But what I understand to be the Q value is basically the width of the. If you imagine a graphic curve, like a bell-shaped curve, for example, with your mid-range being the hump of the bell, then the Q value is the width of the curve, how narrow the band is, or how wide the band is around that center frequency that you set here. Don't take my word for that, because I said it's been ages since I last looked at Q values and mid-range. So I might be wrong on that. Look that up. But basically, it's to do with the width of the band on the mid range. And then finally, your bottom end, your top end, beg your pardon, EQ high, which is this one here. Again, you have two different types. You have your standard EQ high, where you can adjust the gain plus or minus 12 again, I'd have to guess. Yeah, plus or minus 12 again. At frequencies anywhere from 500 Hertz all the way up to 18 kilohertz again, as with your mid-range. But at the top there, you have a high cut filter, which is obviously the exact opposite of a low cut filter. So you basically set the frequency range as with the low cut filter. Here it's set by default at 800 Hertz, which means anything above that frequency gets cut from that particular track or channel. And an example of where you might use that would be if you think of the opposite example of the vocal, trying to get rid of those unwanted bass frequencies which are going to muddy up the sound. With a high cut filter, you could get rid of some unwanted trebly frequencies that aren't normally represented by the instrument itself, and thus maybe unwanted noise. And a good example would be string noise on a bass guitar. So the bass guitar, we've already talked about the frequency range that the instrument actually covers in the notes that it produces, but you also get a lot of harmonic frequencies and unwanted trebly frequencies from things like your fingers squeaking up and down the strings, or from handling noise again. So with the bass guitar, you may want to introduce a high cut filter to cut out any of those upper range frequencies that aren't really part of the instrument's actual noise that you want, the desirable noise. It's more unwanted background noise that again is just cluttering up your mix, taking up space, valuable space in your high frequency range that you could dedicate instead to other instruments and vocals that live in that range naturally, and giving them a bit more space to breathe and a bit more clarity in your mix. So that's a high cut filter and where you might want to use it. If I go back high cut, back to the standard EQ high setting. Once you've got whichever one you want selected and your setting set, you just press exit, come all the way back out again, and that's how to EQ on the R24. I'll just give you an example of, just check my battery again, it's going to go in a second, but just give you a quick example of like a very obvious and pronounced effect with the EQ. So if I hit play, exit out of that, advance to the first mark, hit play. Forward wind a bit to the vocal when that kicks in, I'm not sure when it does come in. Right, so I'm just going to isolate the vocal by muting all of these tracks, oops a daisy, and just give us the vocal here. High sticky scenes, you know what I mean. Now what I'm going to do is rewind again, set up a loop around that, because this is a really handy way of EQing and trying different effects, is to loop a piece and just hear the effect it's having over and over again. It's a lot easier to concentrate, I find, that way. So I sticky scenes, you know what I mean. I sticky scenes, you know what I mean. I sticky scenes, you know what I mean. So I've looped that. I sticky scenes, you know what I mean. And now I'm going to go give it full gain on the 800 Hertz and full cut. Full gain and flat. So you can see the difference there. It gets very hissy. Obviously I did that on purpose to make it as pronounced as possible so you could hear it. It gets very hissy and very trebly, obviously, the more gain you give it, and that was at 800 Hertz. and more woolly and muddy and cloudy, the more you cut that frequency on the vocal there. So you can play about with that and hear the way it sounds, but and check my other videos for how you set up that quick and easy loop function. But it's a really good way to audition a specific section of a track or a song, play it over and over and over again while you're trying out all your different effects, and it's a lot easier to work with that way. So I hope that's been useful, and I'll just cancel the loop function by hitting AB repeat again, and it's now gone, and that's it. EQing, basic EQing on the R24. Okay, finally for this part 4, we're going to look at the insert effect on the Zoom R24. More than panning and EQ, it is a little bit complicated until it clicks with you how it works, and then from then on you should be laughing. So it's really worth persevering with the insert effect because it is super powerful. You can do a lot with it, a lot of different things with it. You're almost always going to want to use it at least once in your mix for mastering. Excuse me, my iPad's just beeped. I thought I'd turn that off, but anyway, I'll just reduce the sound there. Sorry about that. You're going to use it. You're going to want to use it at least once in your mix for mastering, for example. But you may want to use it lots of other times in your mix as well. So, what is it? Well, the insert effect. If you remember on other videos, we looked at send and return effects, and they're available on each channel for two things. One, reverb, and second, chorus/delay. So they're the two effects. Now they're very good and they're very useful and we use them a lot, but they're quite restricted to those two types of effects really, reverb and chorus/delay. But they're always available. You can turn them on, you can turn them off. They're all sitting there on the channels ready to be used. You can use them across all 24 tracks if you wish, and it's all good. So they're quite easy to use, and I've shown you how to use them in previous videos. The insert effect is slightly different. So let's try and think of this in terms of a device that you need to plug into your mix somewhere, and you choose where to plug it in to your mix. At the beginning on loads of tracks, or at the beginning on one track, or while you're mastering towards the end on one or two tracks, or the whole thing, or whatever. You choose whereabouts to insert it into the recording, into the mix. There's a bit of a misnomer you need to get your head around in that you can. The manual and online guides and all this will tell you you can only use it once. You can only use it once at a time. You can only use it one at a time. So what that means is you can use it for putting a nice crunchy distortion or a certain bass, certain amp simulation onto a bass or electric guitar. But if you then want to use it for something else, you lose that distortion effect unless you record the distortion effect into the track. And if this is sounding a bit complicated, I'm probably not explaining it very well, but all will become clear when I show you how it works on here. Now, the insert effect, there are loads of them, and you'll have to refer to the manual here like I'm having to do now to get a guide as to what they all are and what they all do. But just to give you a quick summary, you have categories, about 5 categories I think of insert effect. Let me just have a quick look here. Yeah, 5 I think it is. So you have clean and crunch effects. You'll see it referred to in the manual as algorithms. Don't let that concern you. The algorithm is the effect made up of a series of modules. Like in any given crunch effect, you might have a delay module, a compressor module, a noise reduction module, a blah blah whatever, all of which are adjustable, fully adjustable. You can make your own effect actually, but all of those strung together create what Zoom call this algorithm, or the effect patch, if you want to see it that way. So there's loads of clean and crunch effects. In fact, there are 20 on this, giving you various, if you refer to the manual, giving you various amp simulations, for example, like a Vox AC30, which is quite nice, Marshall 59 crunch, compressor sounds, what's this one, a Fender twin reverb sound. So they're your clean crunch algorithms, and obviously you'd want to use those primarily on electric guitar, I would suggest. Your next ones are your distortion algorithms, or your distortion insert effects, and there are 29, hang on, 44 of those are ranging from all manner of things. Carlos Santana type sound, Richie Blackmore type sound, Brian May, Buddy Guy, Jimi Hendrix fuzz sounds. There's all sorts of things on there. You can read the manual, but they're called your distortion algorithms. Then you've got your bass, your acoustic or bass simulator algorithms. You can read those. There are 9 of those. Your bass algorithms for bass guitar primarily, up to 19 of those, giving such classics as the SVT, the Ampeg SVT, the Bassman, the Hartke, a Sansamp, what do you call them, preamp, you know, the Sansamp Tech 21 pedals, sounds for those as well. You've then got a mic algorithm, giving various characteristics to a vocal sound, like a rock vocal or an opera vocal or whatever. You can play about with those. There are 29 of those, I think, or 30 of those. You've then got a dual mic algorithm. Basically, that will affect 2 mics at the same time. So if you've got a duet, you can. The lovely thing about this is because you can only use the insert effect on one thing at a time. If you pick something like a dual mic effect, that means you can apply it across 2 microphones at the same time, but you're only using one effect. So there's your dual mic algorithms. They go all the way up to again 30 of those. Your stereo algorithms give you a lot of different effects there. There's 40 of those, I think, and then you've got an 8 times comp EQ algorithm. Similar to the dual mic effect, the 8 times comp EQ is nice in that it will allow you to affect all 8 inputs simultaneously, and a really good application for that effect, that insert effect, would be if you are live micing a full drum kit and using up to 8 mics, or however many you want. You can apply compression and EQ via the insert effect to every single one of those inputs simultaneously, and you're only using one effect. It's an 8 times comp EQ effect, so that's quite handy to get your head around that. And then finally, and one that I use a hell of a lot, is the mastering effect or mastering algorithm. I'm going to talk about mixdown and mastering in another video, but suffice it to say, I found the insert effects, the mastering insert effects, to be really, really good. Particularly the one I like is Rock Show, effect number 12. The manual describes it as giving a rock style mix a live feel. And as most of the music I play is rock with the band, just brings, makes the mix shine and brings it out of itself, gives it like a 3D quality, nice sheen to the mix, gives it depth and clarity. It just really polishes it up nice, and it's dead easy to use. So that's what the insert effect is. Why we would want to use it depends on the circumstances, because you can use it for any number of things. You can, if you're inputting a clean electric guitar, you might want to use an insert effect of a crunch or a distortion algorithm to give your guitar a certain sound. Equally with the bass, you might want to simulate a certain amp sound, and the insert effect will give you that with the vocal, with whatever. So it depends really on what it is you're trying to do. So you need to have a look through the book and see what's available, and there are loads, what each one does, and then you get an idea then as to how you might use it creatively. So they're very, very good. But you need to decide. I guess two things really when you're thinking about the insert effect and the use of it. Whether, first of all, where you're going to put it, what you're going to use it for, and then secondly, whether you are going to use it as the finished recorded sound, or whether you are going to use it purely for monitoring purposes. In other words, you can only hear the distortion or whatever while you're playing, but then when you play the track back it's clean, and you may then want to go into a DAW and mess about with that clean track and use all sorts of different effects in the DAW, not on the R24. So you've got to decide whether you want to use the effect just for monitoring purposes, or whether you actually want to burn the effect into the recording and have it part of the track that you've recorded. Just bear in mind, if you do that, known as recording it wet with the effect. If you do that, you can't then undo it. You can't take out that effect. So a lot of people who know a lot more about sound production than I do advocate universally pretty much that where possible you should record your tracks dry and unaffected, and then you can mess about with them in a DAW to your heart's content and create multiple copies of a vocal and try different effects on it, and you've got ultimate flexibility there. I don't go in for that so much because I haven't got the time to mess about. So, and the stuff we're doing is quite rough and ready and quite basic. So I would, if I find a nice crunchy insert effect on Doc or Stephen's lead guitar that I like and that they're happy with, then I'll just burn that into the track and that's it, done. What happens then is if you record something with the insert effect wet, in other words, if you burn it into the track, if you record it into the track, that then frees up the insert effect to be used elsewhere, because you've now got your recorded distorted guitar. You don't need the insert effect to sit there anymore, distorting the guitar, because you've recorded the distorted sound and that's yours for eternity. So now the insert effect is free to be used elsewhere. Adversely, if you, or conversely, whatever it is, if you record that distorted guitar dry, so as your guitarist is playing it, you can hear it nice and crunchy and nice and distorted, because the insert effect is applied to input number one where the electric guitar's coming in, and you can hear it for monitoring purposes, but your record settings are set to dry. That means then when you play it back, it'll just sound clean, and you'll be thinking, where's my nice crunchy sound gone? If you record it dry, the minute you want to use that insert effect then somewhere else, you're not able to use it on the guitar to give you back the crunchy sound, because you can only use it sort of once at a time, if that makes sense. So I don't think I'm explaining this very well. But you just need to be aware that you can use it over and over and over again, but only once you've burned it into the particular track that you're playing. And in the example of the electric guitar, if you want to think creatively about this, you've got different ways of doing it. If you still want to use the insert effect and give it a distorted sound, but you also want to keep the clean guitar sound for tinkering about with later on in a DAW, in other words, have your cake and eat it, you can actually do that as well if you think creatively, because you can record you can record your guitar with the distortion insert effect on that particular input, giving you a nice crunchy sound while you're playing along. Sounds great. Record it dry, so when you play it back it's just a clean guitar sound, sounds pretty crap. Then you've got your clean guitar sound, which is yours to keep, but you can also bounce, using the bounce function, which I showed you in another video. You can bounce that clean guitar track to another track on the R24 through the insert effect, the crunchy distorted insert effect in this particular example, and that's now giving you a new recording of the guitar, same guitar part. You're only playing it back on the R24. You don't have to replay it. you play back the recorded clean guitar sound through the crunchy insert effect. You've now got your destination track for the bounce is now a nice crunchy distorted guitar. So you've got both. You've got a clean on track 1 and a dirty on track 2 that you've bounced it through. So you've got the best of both worlds. And because you've burnt it in on the bounce, you've now freed up the insert effect to use elsewhere. So you can use it over and over and over again in your recording, but you can only use it once at a time. And the minute you take it off something to use it somewhere else, and you haven't recorded that particular track or input wet, then you lose the effect. I hope that makes sense. To me, I think if you do want that versatility and that flexibility of having all those lovely clean, unaffected tracks in your DAW for working on later, probably the best way to do it with the insert effect is use it for monitoring purposes so it sounds nice when you're playing it, but record it dry so you've got the clean sound, and then bounce it through the insert effect using the bounce function so you've got the dirty track as well if you want to do that on the R24. That's probably the safest way of doing it if you want, as I said, if you want your cake and eat it, if you want to be able to use the insert effect over and over, but you also want both the dirty and the clean sounds that you've recorded to mess about with later. So I hope that makes sense. It will become clearer when we have a look at it now on the R24. So that's what it is and why we would want to use it. Let's have a look at how. Okay then, let's take a look now at this pesky insert effect and see on the Zoom R24 exactly how it works. Now off camera here, and to save me messing about, I'm not going to keep changing the camera angles because it's just all too much like hard work, so you'll have to trust me when I say that off camera on my lap is currently sitting an Epiphone Les Paul 1960s Tribute Edition in Heritage Cherry Burst with Gibson 57s bridge and neck, and that's what I'll be using for this. So good revision, I think, just to let you know. I've got the electric guitar going into input number 1 here. I've got the high Z switch engaged so that the impedance is nicely matched up. I've cheated a little bit because I've already set the gain up before I turn the camera on. But just to show you what I've got there with the levels, I'm going to go ahead and select a new project. So you all should know by now, we press the project button and we select new at the top of the list, and it's give it the default name of PRJ006. The settings are currently set to continue. I'm going to set that to reset, so everything is blank and back to default settings. The sampling rate I'm going to leave at 44.1 because that's fine, and then down to execute and press enter, little hourglass, and there we go, we've got a new project, brand new, fresh, clean, new project. Now you can see from the display here that the rev and the cho boxes are currently lit up, which means the reverb and the chorus effects are switched on. And if we go into the effect button here and go on the soft key, reverb is set to on, and chorus on the third soft key is set to on, and exit, and you can see here reverb and chorus is switched on at the moment, although I don't have any send levels set up. So although the modules are switched on, nothing's going to them at the moment. I'm going to leave it like that because we're talking about the insert effect. So what I'm going to do, as I've already said, I'm just twanging the guitar here, set this to record, set the rest of these to blanks just so we don't confuse anybody. There's no effects or EQ or anything on this at the moment, it's just a plain jangly guitar, and I'm strumming it just to get the level there. As you can see, it's and that obviously wasn't a chord, I was just strumming it with no fingering. So you can see we've got the level set up nicely, peaking into the orange at 0 dB, no red light, no peak clipping or anything like that indicating, so we're all good to go. I've got the monitor level set up at up and around unity gain, and the master level set up and around just below unity gain, just to keep the volume down a bit. I've got this going through a bass amp, through the CD in section of a bass amp, so the sound quality isn't great, but you will get the general idea. Now, here I'm going to, first of all, switch the insert effect on and select an effect, a nice effect for that guitar, and apply it to input 1, which is where the guitar's coming in. So the effect will be inserted into the signal chain across input number 1. So we go ahead and press the effect button. The soft keys, reverb, chorus, and the very first one is insert. So I'm going to hit insert and it brings up the insert effect menu, and at the moment the only thing we can see is on or off, and it's set to off. We can't see anything else. We're going to move the jog wheel around to on, and then we see the rest of the menu then come up, and we can see at the minute that by default the algorithm selected is one of the clean category of effects that I went through earlier on in my description at the start of this video. The patch, in other words the type of clean effect, is set to number 0, which is Z clean. I'm going to ignore the next one because I'll come on to that in a minute, but the very bottom is the edit option, which we're not going to use for this video, but that's where you go in and you can tweak some of the settings on some of the modules within the algorithm that you've selected. So if you imagine an algorithm or an effect as a chain of effects, so you might have a noise reduction, a compressor, an EQ, or whatever it might be, you can tweak each one of those in the edit menu here, and when you finish tweaking and you've got a sound you like, you can go down to save and give it a name, so effectively you can build your own effects. But we're going to ignore those last two for now because they're a bit beyond the scope of this video, and we're going to go back up to input source, which is here on the menu, and at the moment by default it's set to input 1, which is perfect because that's exactly where we want it. We want the insert effect inserted into input 1, so when we play the guitar, whatever effect we have selected will be heard, and all it leaves us to do now is go up and select a one that we want. I don't particularly want a clean algorithm for this, I want a nice dirty crunchy guitar. So we'll flick the jog wheel around once to distortion. I'm referring to the manual because, as I've already said, there's loads of them and I want to pick a nice one. So distortion number 0 on the list is a Marshall 59 drive sound that follows volume changes and provides outstanding dynamics according to Zoom. So that sounds good for what we're going to play. Right, I've got this on for record, but I'm not recording anything over here. I've got this on for record so you can hear what I'm playing, but nothing will be recorded. Okay, so just to recap, we've got the insert effects switched to on, we've got it applied across input number 1 at the moment, and we've selected the type of insert effect. We want the category of insert effect, i.e. a distortion effect, and within that then we've selected this nice 1959 Marshall sound. Okay, so we can exit out of that, and you see straight away on the home screen the insert effect little light is now lit up next to the reverb and chorus light, indicating all three are switched on, active and available. Okay, but if you remember, I've got no send level set up to the reverb or chorus, so nothing's going to them. You won't hear any effect from those. All of what you're about to hear is from the insert effect. So let's pick up the guitar, oops, and play something that you might recognise. So I'm not very good on the guitar, but we'll play something fairly easy just to demonstrate the effect. So here we go. So I could go on, you should recognise that as Highway to Hell AC/DC, fairly iconic rock riff. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to set this up to record what I've just played. It's in the effect menu, which is what we're dealing with, effects at the moment. So what you want to have a look at now is go into the effect menu, and right the way down the bottom of the insert effect menu you can see the final one, I think it is, yeah, the final one is record signal. And at the moment that's set to wet, which means whatever I record now on with the insert effect running will be burned into the track and cannot be removed. So in other words, I'll always have a distorted guitar sound recording. I won't have a clean version that I can mess about with in a DAW. So if that suits you, then leave record signal to wet and burn it into the track when you record. That's fine. But for this demonstration, I'm going to set it to dry using the jog wheel. So I've flicked it back to dry, which means that I'll still hear the distortion coming in because it's applied here on input number 1, and I've got my monitoring level set up, but the actual recording will not have the effect incorporated within it or burned into it, okay, because I've got the record signal set to dry. So what it's going to record is the nice clean pure sound coming from the guitar. So let's just make sure my other menu settings are correct. Yeah, that's all good. Input 1 is the input source. I'm going to exit out of that. I've got this arm for record here. I've got my level set. I'm going to hit arm for record here. Red light's going to come on. Nothing's recording yet, as you know, until I hit play, which I'm going to go ahead and do now, and we'll play this, and then I'll play it back to you so you can see then what we can do with the effect. You get the general idea. I'll hit stop there. That's saved what we've just recorded. I'm going to knock this off, record standby, so you're not hearing lots of squeaking coming from the guitar, and let's play that back and see what we have. So if you remember, hold down stop and hit rewind right to the beginning of the song. Nice handy shortcut. Level set okay here for listening to it, and over here this arm for play, hit play, anything lit green will play back. Now then, you're probably all thinking, what's happened to the nice crunchy Marshall sound that we had a few moments ago? Well, this is where it's really important to understand how the insert effect works. What's happening is, at the moment, we still have the insert effect switched on, the distortion, everything else, but remember, it's still applied to input number 1, and at the minute, nothing is coming into input number 1 anymore because I'm not playing the guitar. What we're playing back is what's on track 1, which is here in the signal chain. And there is a difference between inputs and tracks on the R24, because if you think about it, we only have 8 inputs, but we have up to 24 tracks, 3 banks of 8, using the bank buttons here. So a track and an input are totally different things, and in fact, in theory, if you have the record settings in the project menu set to always new, which will create a new file every time you make a recording over and over again on one track. If you want, you could end up with 100 files sitting there, all waiting to be assigned to a track so you can listen to it play back. Then hopefully you can see how inputs, of which there are only 8, are very different to tracks. So at the minute we have the insert effect switched on, but it's applied here at input 1, where at the moment nothing is coming in because I'm not playing the guitar. Here's my hands, okay? So what we need to do now, if we hit play, we're just going to hear the clean guitar sound, which was recorded dry. That's how we got the setting set up over there, if you remember from earlier. So now what we need to do, if we want to hear a nice crunchy sound when we play that track back, is to go back into the effect menu and change whereabouts we place it. So go down to input source and wind the jog wheel around input number 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the very next one after that will be track 1. So the input source has remained the same. It's a distortion, it's a Marshall drive, but now instead of being here, we've moved it to here, to track 1. And just to prove that, if I carry on playing it back, okay, so all we've done there is play back what's on here, and we've put the insert effect onto it, but it's still only monitoring. If we take that insert effect now and put it somewhere else or change it or whatever, we're still left with just the clean, dry guitar signal here, which may be what you want to end up with. That's fine, okay. But let's imagine now we want to free up the insert effect in order to use it elsewhere. And if you remember what I said at the beginning in the introduction, you've essentially got two options really, as far as I can see, to keep that nice crunchy guitar sound and free up the insert effect to be used elsewhere in your project, because you can only use it once in one place at a time. In order to have your cake and eat it, as I said earlier on. So your first option is to record wet in the first place, and that means whatever's coming in on input 1, which is where we had the insert effect applied. If we had the record setting in the effect menu set to wet, it means whatever's being recorded here will be recorded with the effect. Now that may be fine for you. You may not want to make changes to that in a DAW later on, so fine, go ahead and record it wet. Your second option is leave things as they are, keep your nice clean guitar sound, and now perform a bounce from track 1 to any of the vacant tracks, it doesn't matter where, track number 1, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to engage the bounce function again, bounce on, okay? We've got our source track here set up, which is at the minute clean, so let's have a look at our effects. Input source on the insert effect is currently set to another track, so we're going to put it back to track 1. It's still set to distortion, okay? We're going to come down and make sure that the record signal is wet, that's good, so it will burn the effect in. We've got our destination track lit up red, level set, ready for record. We're going to go back to the top of the song, we're going to hit record, and we're going to hit play, and bounce is on, so let's try that. Okay, right, now what we have is over here on track number 1 we have a clean guitar sound. I'll just turn this insert effect off now altogether to make things easier. So turn it off. So now it doesn't sit anywhere, it's actually switched off, and if we go out with that you can see the insert light has actually gone out now, indicating it's not in use. So if we play back this, it should be a clean guitar sound. Okay, now if we play back this, it should be a nice crunchy, distorted, affected guitar sound, because we've played this back, we've bounced this with the insert effect switched on and the record signal set to wet onto this empty track, which has now had the effect burned into it, and it will always and forever be now part of that track. Okay, so let's have a listen to that. So remember, the insert effect switched off. Okay, so we've got the clean version that we initially recorded and the fuzzy distorted version that we've now bounced as a result of bouncing it through the insert effect. Now I hope that's demonstrated to you how the insert effect works, and how important it is to think about whereabouts you want to place it and what you want to use it for. And let's have a look. We'll just turn the bounce off so we don't leave that on by accident. Let's just go through some of the menu options in that insert effect. Turn it back on again. Come down to input source, because this is quite interesting. On this distortion category of effects, you can only apply it to one track or one input at a time. So the first, the menu begins at input 1 all the way up to input 8, and then it goes from track 1 all the way up to track 24, it should do, yeah, and after that you've nothing. So you can only apply it to one of the 8 inputs or one of the 24 tracks, and that's that type of effect. But if we go up to try a different category, for example the dual mic effect, if you can remember what I said earlier on, the dual mic is actually designed for either a duet or more commonly a singer-songwriter, in which case you're using one of the microphones for your vocal and one pointed at the guitar, miking the guitar up. So you can now apply dual mic here, you can now apply various types of dual mic effects to the input source thing has changed. Inputs number 1 and 2, inputs number 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, or tracks 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 23 and 24, and then finally you can even apply it to the master track here when you're mixing down. We'll cover that in another video. So a lot more going on with the dual mic effect, as you can see from one of the single track or insert effects that we were using earlier on with the guitar. And on up to the 8 times comp EQ effect, and again the input source options have changed, and now we can place that effect across all 8 inputs at the same time, and that's actually or banks of 8 tracks at the same time, tracks 1 to 8, tracks 9 to 16, or tracks 17 to 24. So you can see the 8 times comp EQ can be used in a lot more places simultaneously than just the single effects that we were using earlier on. So I hope that's demonstrated how to use it and got you thinking about the best way to do it. Really is just play about and see how you get on with it, and it'll soon become clear. But you need to think about what it is you're trying to achieve, whether or not you want to be left with just the dirty affected sound, in which case record your signal wet, or whether you actually want a bit more versatility and may use a DAW later on, or try different insert effects, in which case record it dry, and you can always bounce it through onto another track and record that wet, so you've got the best of both worlds. I want to show you something else as well here, because this is quite nice. If you're not sure what effect you want to use, let's play back our clean guitar sound here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set that on a loop in a minute, so it just loops and loops and loops that one riff over and over and over again, and then while it's playing back I'm going to try different insert effects here. So I'm going to make sure the input source, and go back up to the type of algorithm, I'll go back to the distortion effect there, and then I'm going to go down to input source will be track 1, not input 1, track 1 here, so all the way up to track 1, there we go, and exit out of that, so I can set up my loop, which is the AB repeat button here. There's the start point of the loop. I'm going to set the end point. There, end. That'll just keep playing over and over again. Turn this down here. So that's looped now, it'll just keep playing over and over again until I stop it. Now then, let's go into the effect menu. Insert effect is switched on. Come down to the type of patch for the distortion. Let's try the next one, which is a JCM 2000. Let's hear the difference. Go back to the other one. Okay. Try another one, a PV. Just cycling through them all now. Anyway, you get the general idea, but I think you can see from that you can have a lot of fun with these insert effects. I've got someone asking me recently, are there any distortion effects on the Zoom R24 for guitars and that kind of thing? Well, the answer is yes. There's loads of them, and they're all tweakable. I mean, I don't bother messing about with them at the moment, but you can go down, for example, on this one, number 15, which is a big muff pedal simulator. Go into the edit menu here. You've got the first module in the signal chain is the compressor and limiter. That's currently set to off. We'll go across to the effects module is set to off. The preamp is all set with a cabinet, which is matched to the type of effect. We've got gain and tone controls and level controls on the preamp. Go across to the 6-band EQ, bass, low, mid, treble, presence, harmonics, level. You know, I mean, your options are endless here. Go across to the delay module. It's switched off on this particular effect. The reverb is set light to a room with a short decay time and a pre-delay and blah blah blah. The ZNR, which is the zoom noise reduction, is set to level 15. The patch is set to level 19. And we're back to the comp limiter. So if you imagine that as a chain of modules giving you your finished effect, you can tweak any aspect of it to your heart's content, save it, give it a new name. You've just created your own effect. So very, very impressive, I think, very versatile. Exit out of that, get rid of my loop by pressing A/B repeat again. And ladies and gents, that's it for the insert effect for now. I'll look at it again briefly when we get to the episode concerned with mastering and mixing down your final track, because you use the insert effect a lot and you put it here and record it wet, and then you've got a nicely polished final master. But that's it for now, YouTube. Hope that was useful, and as always, leave any comments, questions, observations, whatever you have, in the boxes below the video. I always, you'll see from my history, I always try and answer them, and I try and answer them quickly. So if you've got any concerns, queries, or anything like that about anything you've seen in this video, then let me know. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, and then episode 5, which will be out in the next few weeks, we'll be looking at the track sequencer and drum patterns and loops, and how to build them and use them in your songs if you don't have a drummer, if you want to use the thing as a drum machine to accompany you on guitar, for example. Alright YouTube, thanks a lot, and bye for now.